The great author C.S. Lewis was right when he wrote, "When I come to the edge of heaven, may I realize that my expectations were entirely wrong." God does not lead us to our final destination through expected and predictable paths, you see. Instead, He guides us through mysterious ways full of twists and surprises. It is in the unexpected that we find revelations of His love and power. End of quote. What a remarkable word that is. No matter how tough things get, my friend, keep moving. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you can't fly, you can run. If you can't run, you can walk. If you can't walk, you can crawl. But whatever you do, you've got to keep moving forward. Persistence is the key to overcoming any obstacle. And you may be asking the question, but how do I do that given the condition I'm currently going through? That precisely, my friend, is why we are here. Welcome back. Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Over the Line, where we dive deep into the art of mastering failure. I'm your host, Martins, and today we are talking about something we all face at some point in our journey through life. That is overcoming odds and rising above obstacles as we chase our dreams, whether in business or in life. Before we get started, if you are enjoying this podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button, leave a review, share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. Now, we can begin to dive in. And I like to say to you that failure is an inevitable part of life. But how we handle it, how we rise from the ashes, is what sets us apart. So today's episode is about not just surviving, but thriving despite the odds. We'll We'll explore life lessons from some outstanding people, grounded in scripture and Stoic philosophy, and inspired by the words of some of the greatest leaders in history. And that's the essence of our being together on this podcast, as you might have gathered and noticed. We will also look at psychological evidence that shows how we can train our minds to overcome any obstacle. But before we dive in, let's talk about two incredible entrepreneurs who faced enormous challenges and went on to build two of the most iconic brands in our world. And that is Howard Schultz and of Starbucks and Sam Walton of Walmart. First, we look at the nature of obstacles. It's important for us to understand this, the nature of obstacles. If we don't understand it, we might be going round and round in circles, going from pillar to post, wondering what life is throwing at us. So let's start by acknowledging a universal truth. Life is full of obstacles. They come in many forms. Financial difficulties, for instance, health challenges in other parts, failure in business, rejection of some sort, and sometimes the silent battles within our own very self. These obstacles can seem unsurmountable, but they are, in fact, the very building blocks of our success. As Winston Churchill once said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. End of quote. So, what do we do when life throws obstacles in our ways? How do we rise above them? So that's the fundamental thing. The nature of obstacles that they come in different sizes and in different stages and different phases of life, and we've got to be prepared for it. But the thing is, when these things are thrown at us, how do we rise above them? And that brings me to the second point, the power of perspective. The lessons from scripture and from philosophy. Somebody saying, how could you bring scripture, religion, and philosophy together? Is that not an oxymoron? Two things can consist and exist together at the same place, and that's why we want to explore them, you see. The ancient Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus taught us the importance of perspective when dealing with adversity. The importance of perspective when we deal with adversity. This concept is centered around the idea that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can control, on the other hand, how we respond to it. As Epictetus said, it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And that's what pondering on. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that really matters. Let's take Howard Schultz, the visionary behind Starbucks, as an example. This visionary behind Starbucks is such a remarkable story. Schultz grew up in a working class family in Brooklyn, New York. His father held various low paying jobs with no job security, and he lived through that experience in all of those. And it looked like life was throwing things at him. And their family struggled financially all through his growing up years, record shows in some reports. Schultz was determined to rise above these circumstances. And that's the difference, you see. After earning a college degree, he eventually joined a small coffee company called Starbucks, which at that time only sold coffee beans and equipment. So they were selling coffee beans and equipment. Schultz saw something bigger in the midst of those challenges. He envisioned Starbucks as a place where people could gather, a third place, he called it, between work and home, a place where you provide comfort to people. But when he pitched his idea to the company's owners, they didn't share his vision, so they couldn't see beyond their own current conditions. Despite the setback, Schultz didn't give up. So he created his own chain store to prove his concept. Later, when Starbucks was up for sale, Schultz seized the opportunity by buying the company, transforming it into the global brand that we know today. Schultz's story is a powerful testimony to Stoic principles. Instead of following the initial rejection to defeat him, he saw it as a challenge to overcome, a stepping stone to something bigger. He controlled his response to adversity and turned it into an opportunity. His journey reminds us of this concept of amor fati. And amor fati it means embracing fate and turning obstacle into advantage. So are you able to see the current condition that seems to be contrary to be an opportunity for you to rise? And that's the key here. As Marcus Aurelius said also, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. What stands in the way becomes the way. This shift in perspective is not just philosophical but also psychological. It is fundamental. Research in cognitive behavioral therapy, or what people call CBT, shows that how we interpret events in our lives, the narratives we build around the events in our life, significantly impact our emotional well-being. So by viewing obstacles as opportunities, we can reduce anxiety, increase resilience, and find creative solutions to our problems. And that's worth thinking about. So what perspective do you have concerning the challenges and the obstacle you think you might be facing? What are the obstacles? Now, the third thing to realize here is if you're going to rise over the obstacles and challenges to achieve your life dreams and goals, you've got to realize that you are not alone in this. You are not the only one, because some of these challenges can play tricks on our mind, thinking we are the only one in these, I'm the only one going through this part. Everyone is going through something. Never ever forget that. Someone is going through something, but the difference is that people are going through, but they cheer up and they move on, and they raise their shoulder high and they keep going to make things happen. So here we will look at the real life lessons of people who have faced their own failure and overcome their personal and professional odds to rise to where they are today. So history is full of story of people who have overcome unimaginable odds to achieve greatness, and that needs to sink in. So, in addition to Howard's story, we consider Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. For decades, I follow his story. He's been an inspiration in many respects and in many ways. Walton faced numerous challenges on his path to build the world's largest retail shop. Sam Walton was not born into wealth. After serving in World War II, he used some loan he got from his father-in-law to purchase a Ben Franklin variety store in Newport, Arkansas. Walton also was very inventive and focused on delivering value to his customer as he began as a young lad. But despite his successes, the store lease was not renewed. And so that meant he was forced to give up his successful business and start over again. Many at that point will have seen this as a crushing defeat. But Walton didn't give up. He relocated and opened a new store in the same state. There he experimented with discounting and a large selection of merchandise, which eventually led to the opening of the first Walmart store in 1962. Walton's relentless focus on innovation, customer satisfaction, and his willingness to adapt turned Walmart into retail giant. Like Schultz, Walton exemplified resilience and persistence. And that's important for us to take note. He didn't let the loss of his first store deter him. Instead, he learned from the experience and built something even greater. Walton's journey echoes the word of Abraham Lincoln. My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with failure. Lincoln, like Walton, faced failure repeatedly. He lost his job, failed in business, suffered nervous breakdown, and was defeated in numerous elections before becoming the 16th president of the United States of America. Yet, despite these setbacks, he persevered, understanding that failure was simply a stepping stone to success. Both Schultz and Walton reminds us that the obstacles we face are not the end of the road. They are part of the journey. The words of C.S. Lewis in his book is very instructive. He wrote, and I quote, "When I come to the edge of heaven, may I realize my expectations were entirely wrong. God does not lead us to our final destination through expected and predictable paths. Instead, he guides us through mysterious ways full of twists and surprises. It is in the unexpected that we find revelations of his love and power." Wow. Scripture will say, Selah. Stop, ponder, and think on these things. That brings me to the fourth point. The fact that all of these concepts about rising to overcome odds and challenges are not just philosophical, but they have psychological evidences based in the science of resilience. And so, what is the science behind overcoming personal challenge? I can boldly say it. It is in the science of resilience, to which we have tons of psychological evidence. Science proven psychologically that if you stay resilient, you can rise above obstacles. So let's bring in some psychological evidence if that will help. The concept of resilience, which is our ability to bounce back from adversity, is certainly something that psychologists have studied extensively. Research shows that resilience isn't a fixed trait. It is something we can develop over time through our experiences and mindset. One groundbreaking study by psychologist Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania found that individuals who practice what he calls learned optimism are more resilient. Learned optimism is about training your brain to look for the positives in the negative situations that happen. It is the opposite of learned helplessness, when you feel that you have no control over your circumstances. That's learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. Seligman's research shows that people who view setbacks as temporary and specific rather than permanent and pervasive are more likely to overcome them. Wow. For example, if your business fails, instead of thinking I'm a failure, a resilient response will be, this business didn't work, but I have learned valuable lessons for my next venture. Howard Schultz and Sam Walton both exemplify this mindset. Schultz didn't view the initial rejection of his vision as a permanent failure, but as a challenge to prove his concept elsewhere. Walton didn't let the loss of his first store stop him. He saw it as a temporary setback to move on to create something even greater and bigger. Another powerful psychological tool is the practice of gratitude. I can't overemphasize this. Rooted in scripture, solidly proven by psychology, research has shows that regularly reflecting on what we are grateful for can significantly improve our mental health and increase our resilience. When we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, we are better equipped to face challenges head on. And that brings me to the last point, where we look at the practical strategies to overcoming obstacles in our own life. How do you bring all of these things we've said now to practical terms where the rubber meets the road? And that's where I'm going to be looking at what I consider to be 6 points to help you in what I call practical strategies to overcoming obstacles. Now let's get these practical strategies. The first of them is to embrace failure as a learning opportunity. We probably have touched on these in one form or another in our previous episode, but it bears repeating again and again. So we reposition our thinking and our mindset into all of these. Embracing failure as a learning opportunity. View each failure as a step closer to success. Always seeing what new thing you can do. So you view each failure as a step closer to success. Analyze what went wrong and learn from it, and apply those lessons moving forward. Remember Thomas Edison's word, I have not failed, I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Secondly, develop a growth mindset. People with growth mindset believe that their attitude and abilities and intelligence can be developed through hard work, dedication, and perseverance. When you encounter obstacles, see them as opportunities to grow rather than insurmountable barriers you cannot cross. So reposition your thinking with a positive mindset. And thirdly, practice reflection. At the end of the day, reflect on the challenges you faced and ask yourself, what did I learn from today's obstacles? This practice can help you see your struggles in a more positive light and prepare you to face future challenges with a stronger mindset. And the fourth is surround yourself with positive influence. Positive influences can be very powerful because it helps you to recondition your mind. Seek out mentors, friends, and colleagues who inspire and encourage you. They can offer valuable advice, different perspective, and the support you need when when the going gets tough. Because as Jim Rohn famously said, you are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. So watch where you go and how you go. And fifth, focus on what you can control. Concept through scriptures and philosophy emphasize for us to focus on what we can control and let go of what we cannot control. If you are facing an obstacle, ask yourself, what actions can I take to improve the situation? Channel your energy into these actions that you can take rather than worrying about outcomes beyond your control. The input is on your side, the output, leave it to God, leave it to life, and let God work it out for you. Sixth, keep moving forward. I cannot overemphasize this. Every move forward is a step closer to your destination when you're in the right direction. No matter how tough things get, keep moving. You know, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you can't fly, you can run. If you can't run, you can walk. If you can't walk, you can crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. End of quote, Martin Luther King Jr. Persistence, my friend, is key to overcoming any obstacle. So, as we wrap up this fantastic episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. And that is the obstacles you face are not there to stop you. Let this sink in. The obstacles you face, they are not there to stop you. They are there to show you how much you truly want something and to help you become the person you need to be to achieve it. Remember, every great success story is filled with some moment of doubt, some moment of failure, and overwhelming obstacles. But it is how you choose to respond to these challenges that will determine the ultimate success. So I say to you again, the next time you are confronted with an obstacle, don't ask yourself, why me? Rather, ask, what is this obstacle here to teach me? Embrace the challenge, rise above it, and keep pushing forward. You've got this, and God is on your side. Remember, you've got this. Thank you for tuning in to Over the Line podcast. If you enjoy today's episode, please share it with someone who might need a little inspiration. And remember, the only limits that exist are the ones you place on yourself in your mind. Break through these and keep moving forward. Until next time, I am Martins, reminding you that it is Martins again, calling you to raise your standards in your core relationships, in your career, and in your calling. Till I come your way again, keep raising the bar of performance. You can because you are. Bye for now, and God bless.